Hey, this is Jesse James, and today we are going to be talking a little bit of a preview, really, of the 2025s. All of the 2025s have been released, minus speculations of another icon or like enthusiast editions. Those are usually mid-model release, but we do have everything for the soft tails, those being the ones that a lot of us were kind of waited with bated breath, seeing what they would do. They are all now revealed on Harley's website. There has been some surprises with it for sure. I feel like a lot of us were definitely expecting that 117, but everything that they've done across it has been really exciting. Some general stuff that's kind of across all of it is because of the new tech, as is usually expected with these things, we have seen a price increase on roundabout, usually around 2 grand is what we're seeing across the platform with it. Not crazy unexpected from the motor company, but it's one of those, it is what it is. We are also, as I said, now seeing the 117. There is a difference actually though between the different motors. So they are now a 117 classic, 117 custom, and the 117 high output. Whenever we get into a little bit more of the bikes, I'll tell it's like which bikes have which. The air breathers are really the ones that tell the difference. We're also seeing a lot of 2-into-1 now on the Softail platform. That was something that I don't think was hilariously unexpected. The Milwaukee 8s have been a lot of track record proven that they do like that extra back pressure. So I think the only two bikes that aren't getting a 2-into-1 pipe from the factory is actually going to be like the Breakout and the Fat Boy. Personally, I think that the Heritage should have stayed a shotgun style exhaust of true duals. I think it fits the bike better, but to each their own. Tell me your thoughts down below. Another thing on the bikes is they are all coming with ride modes now. Again, it's some that was not entirely unexpected. I think this is something that the industry's been pushing towards for a little while now of having different ride modes. But it's been put over to the Softail platform, first introduced in the Harley world, actually with the Revolution Max engines on there. The Nightster, Sportster S, and then the Pan America trickled over into the touring bikes over there in 23 mid-model year with the CVOs, and now we're seeing it across the entire board. I have yet, as of I'm recording this, ridden on the Softail platform with the different modes. I know on the full dressers, on the regular touring bikes, it's something where I definitely felt a big difference in the modes because that was my big thing. There's a lot of cars that have these different modes, and for a lot of them, it really doesn't feel all that different. With Harley's approach to these ride modes, I've really liked the fact that they've definitely had a different feel and very much fits the bike and the engine that it's on. Harley has promised the same things, even with these different types of the 117 engine for the Softail platform, but I have yet to get on the bikes myself and ride them. So whenever we do the videos where I go over each bike individually and give you a walk around of my impressions, I'll make sure to ride on those bikes so that you can get my own opinions and thoughts on it. Another thing on these bikes is LEDs are now standard. Thank God. I feel like that's something that it's been something that's been needed on the Softail platform for a while. I do think Harley was behind the times with this, and the fact that now that they've got them is a great addition. Custom Dynamics is going to have to come up with something else because now from the motor company it's coming with it, which is very, very nice. The hand controls are also being changed on these bikes. I've only seen one bike. We have a Street Bob in right now with these hand controls, and I'm going to miss the classic hand controls. Like those hand controls previous have been running for a very long time in like some form or another. Like even you go back to the early 2000s and it was still that style of hand control. I get why it was time to switch it up, make it more modern. Like that is one thing with these bikes. I made a comment to my coworkers. It feels like last year our Softails were still like this is me improperly labeling them as Rushmore Softails, but they were definitely not on the same level as our touring bikes. Now it feels like it's complete. Our Softails match up with our touring bikes. The other thing that has been done with these bikes is the suspension has also been tweaked. Not unexpected, especially whenever you go and you make the entire platform have a bigger engine. I know my parts guys and my service guys, they say a mistake a lot of people make is whenever they upgrade the engine, they won't do any upgrades for the suspension. And it's really something that should be done. That way you're not experiencing any drag because its suspension needs to be in tune with the engine and from the motor company, and you get the idea. So not unexpected for the suspension to receive some tweaks and get more in tune with them now all sporting that 117 Milwaukee 8. So now we'll get into the bikes themselves, some of the changes. The first one is going to be the Street Bob. So this is a great time to point out that, to my knowledge, this is the first year since the original Softail chassis was introduced that the Softail standard is not available. That is absolutely wild to me. But at the same time, I also get it. Like, I personally, whenever it came down to it, I had the Softail standard or the Street Bob. Pretty dang near the same bike. The only difference was engine, and one of them you were getting the secondary pad right off the cuff. So, like, while I am sad to see the Softail standard go from a pure nostalgia point of view, I also get it. Innovation comes with saying goodbye to things we love. And so, while, again, sad to see it go, the Softail standard will not be joining us for the 2025 model lineup. But we still have the Street Bob, and I really like what they've done with the Street Bob. The number one thing for me is laced wheels are now an option on the bike. I personally could not stand mag wheels on the Street Bob. It's like anything that's a more traditional throwback style, it should have that spoke wheels in my opinion. So Street Bob's now getting spoked wheels. They look great on it. These spoke wheels are also going to be coming with a TPMS sensor in it, so that you can check tire pressure monitoring, something that was only available on the touring bikes for a good while. Love the fact that it's now available on the Street Bob and other Softails. But the mag wheel's still there for the people that don't like messing with these spokes. The good thing about these spokes is they're actually the same thing that we've been doing on the Pan America and the CVOs, to where if a single spoke goes out, you're not having to replace the whole wheel. You can replace a single spoke, so that's really nice on these bikes. Another thing that's being changed up is the tachometer. This is to incorporate the different ride modes, but also it's given it a refresh. I think the minimalistic and little digital footprint that the gauges have been for a while, it was something that not many people really liked it. I think a lot of people were just kind of dealt with it, and then a lot of people weren't crazy about it. I know that personally, my own manager, he has a lowrider ST, and he switched out his gauge so that he could see his RPMs. And so this gauge is going to be a mix of that digital, but also with that analog again, which a lot of people are really going to like, and that's going to be across the platform. On the Street Bob specifically, I love the fact that it's got an actual badge. I think the racing one was very played out. It was time for a refresh. This is a unused design from that Willie G made back in the 60s. And Harley never throws anything away. They always hold on to everything. And then whenever they're looking for inspiration, they'll actually go back into those archives, go through stuff. And then if something fits or something sparks inspiration for somebody, it's not uncommon for that to become a part of a new bike. And that's what we see here. Willie G made this. He didn't think it was fitting to put onto the bike. Didn't throw it away. Here we are, like over 40 years later, and it's now on a brand new bike. So a little bit of history there for you in this bike. This is going to be sporting the 117 Classic Milwaukee 8 engine. The way that somebody has pointed out to me to like easily be able to tell what engine's on it is just look at the breather. If it's the factory breather, these classic engines are going to have the more circular breather. And that's what you see here on the Street Bob, and you'll also see it on the Heritage. The motor company is promising that each of these engines is going to complement the bike that it's attached to. So on the 117 Classic, this engine's going to have a very smooth power band, not very jerky. It's going to be very more for the traditional Harley-Davidson feel. It's what they're going to feel out of this 117 Classic. It's an as I said, haven't ridden on it yet. Whenever I ride on it and do a video specifically over each bike, I'll tell you how I feel about the differences in those engines. The 2-into-1 also, I think it looks good on this bike. It fits what it's looking for. Like what I would be looking for out of the bike. It actually reminds me of Harley's done this before, I think, in the touring setup. And the bike that comes to mind when I think of this is my parts manager. He has a Road Glide that, whenever it came from the factory, he said it came with a 2-into-1 pipe, and that was just for that more sporty feel. So, super cool setup. Our next bike is going to be the Heritage. This is the one that, whenever I first saw it, I feel like it's going to be a miss for me. There's going to be a lot of people that really enjoy the Heritage. Love the fact that Heritage is still around. Everything performance-wise on this bike, I have no doubt it's going to be phenomenal. The Heritage is, in my opinion, since it came out, been the most consistent, well-performing machine that Harley-Davidson is making. Just the colors and the fact that it's mag wheels on this bike from the factory, that's the part where it's going to be a miss for me. But hey, maybe this is the bike where you fall in love with at first sight. Let me know if this is the ones for you. But yeah, so starting up at the front, the big changes, mag wheels on this bike. You can have the laced option, and it's going to be just like the Street Bob, as we talked about previously. It doesn't look bad. I think I preferred the previous setup before, but to each their own. For the instrument cluster, it's still going to be down on the tank, very traditional Heritage style. But it will have those ride modes, as I said at the beginning of the video, where that's going to be just across the entire platform. This one's also sporting the 117 Classic engine. Again, very fitting for a bike that's like 1950s, I believe, for the Heritage. So very historic bike for the motor company, so not unexpected at all for it to have the engine that's supposed to be the most nostalgia style. The delivery of it is supposed to be very linear. The last part I'll point out with it is the 2-into-1. I just don't think it fits on the Heritage. The Heritage to me is like, of the bikes Harley's making right now, even including the Road King, the Heritage is the one that is the most nostalgic for me. So a 2-into-1 that's very modern, and I get it. The engine is tuned to have that 2-into-1 for it being the 117 Classic, but I don't know. I think I would have liked the look of it, the shotgun style more on this. But again, let me know what your thoughts are. This is definitely the bike that is the most I'm the most opinionated about, just of all the lineup released for this year. The next bike up is going to be the Fat Boy. Right off the cuff, this one's you'll notice has a different air breather. This one is a 117 custom engine on this bike, and what they're going for on this is it's going to be a more mid-range feel to it. So it's supposed to have a little bit more get up and go than the classic engine that we saw on the Street Bob and Heritage, but it's not going to be as peppy and aggressive as the next engine we'll get into in a couple bikes from now. So this is the one that's promising a more mid-range power delivery. Whenever it comes in and whenever I do a more in-depth, I'll talk about how I personally felt while riding on it. As for the rest of the bike, not a whole lot of changes across this bike. I expected it, but also didn't expect a whole lot of changes for the Fat Boy. Of the Milwaukee 8 Softail lineup previous, this is the one that I was personally least excited, that I enjoyed riding the least. A lot of that does have to do with the wheel setup. Some people, they have no problem. They enjoy that wheel setup just fine. For me, it just wasn't my cup of tea. They do have a new badging on this bike for this year. I do think it was time for a refresh of that badging. We'd been running the previous style for, I think, since the Milwaukee 8 came out. I could be wrong on that, but it was time for a refresh. I think this is one that can grow on me. It's still paying homage to that World War II airplane style, but we'll see. And then this one does sport the shotgun exhaust. I was super happy to see that this bike didn't have a 2-in-1 because, again, the Fat Boys, like, that's Arnold's bike. It's the heavy hitter, bulldog stance, um, 70s style bike, and you gotta have true duals for me on the Fat Boy. So love the fact that this bike still sporting the true duals. Next up, we have the Breakout. Not a crazy amount of changes across this bike, which I don't think there's anything too unexpected about that, considering that this was the newest Softail reintroduced into the platform in 2023. The things that they've changed on it, one of them I really like, and then another I could take it or leave it. This bike will be sporting the 117 custom engine, as you can tell by the air breather on it. Also, again, just like all these Softails, with that bigger engine from the factory, they're also going to have a suspension that's been tweaked to accommodate for that 117 motor. So one of the things that I love about what they've done with this bike during this mini redesign, as it were, I love the new headlight. I could never get behind the headlight that they've been running on the Breakout in the M8 series, the one where it had that little curvature to it. It just looked weird to me and never fully growed onto me. So having this headlight where it's very traditional fits the bike really well. I also love the gauge cluster on this. The small digital footprint I got, again, was going very Orange County Choppers, early mid-2000s craze. Looked fine, but I like this having an actual tachometer back, so really enjoy that. The thing I'm not crazy on, though, is the tank badging and decals. And on the premium paint with the diamond, I think it looks good, it fits. But for the rest of them, it's got the same problem that I think that the early Nightsters had, of that tank is just not super appealing to me. Let me know what your thoughts are. If you think it looks great, it doesn't flow with the bike for me. Our next bike up is going to be the Lowrider S. So this is one that I personally was excited to see what they do, just because I've always liked the Dyna style bikes. Lowrider's always been my favorite. It's why I went with the Lowrider ST, which we'll get to here in a second. The big thing on this one that I really dig is there's no more bronze wheels. I was one of the people that was very much on the camp of thinking that it had been played out, the bronze accents were cool, but a few years down the line, everybody had it. And really, like, you go back over to the Dyna Lowrider S's, and they had those bronze wheels going back to 16. So almost a decade later, and we're finally getting a different color on those wheels, which I super dig. It makes it where it's not so shoehorned in. This is going to be sporting the 117 high output engine. I have yet to ride on one of these, but you're dang right. As soon as one comes in, I'm going to go ride on one to feel what that difference is. Of all the Milwaukee 8 bikes, this is the platform that I have the most experience with, having owned one. So I am super excited to feel what the difference between the regular 117 and the high output 117 is. If it's anything like the CVO ST 121 high output compared to the 121 VVT engine, it's going to be a drastic difference, so I'm super excited about that. And then, this is a bike that's going to be sporting a 2-in-1. Not entirely unsurprising. I know a lot of people are excited about it. I could personally take it or leave it, but if there's any bike you're going to do a 2-in-1, don't do it on the street, Bob. You definitely do it on the lowriders. And without further ado, the Lowrider ST. And the first thing that I got to point out, even bags are now from the factory that way. This has been the number one complaint of this bike since it came out, is the fact that the bags weren't even. For me, it never really bothered me, but so many people have been begging for the motor company to do even bags. Now they're finally doing it. Still sporting that 117 high output. The fact that this bike has even more similarities with the Lowrider S with the same gauge cluster is really going to make it to where it is just are you in love with the fairing and the bags? If you are, great, go with the Lowrider ST. If not, go with the Lowrider S. So they've really made them even closer between the two, but having played around with both of them, I do think there's a reason to keep both of them around for sure. The other big thing on this bike is the chrome trim. I absolutely adore the chrome trim on the Lowrider ST. So I really like the FXRTs, and now having this bike is either black or chrome, it's your choice. And on those chrome bikes, you'll notice that the paint colors are going to be different and sport more of a throwback style. Really dig like everything about the Lowrider ST in 2025. Really dig it. Can't wait to get out and ride on one to feel what the difference is between my personal Lowrider ST and how this one rides. And now on to the two surprise entries. I was very surprised by both these bikes whenever it was announced that they were going to be coming out. The first one's going to be the Street Glide Ultra. If you had asked me halfway through last year if I thought they were going to be bringing out the full dresser for another year, I would have said maybe, maybe not, leaning towards maybe not, just because the day in the sun feels like it almost may have passed for this bike, but it is back. I dig the look of this. First full Helix bike from the factory. One of the big things that they did is they had to come up with whole new lowers. I'm glad they didn't just recycle the Rushmore style lowers for this bike. These are lowers that definitely fit this style. And I love the fact that you've actually got another storage component down there. I know that personally, for people that have been riding around on a full dresser for a while, they weren't crazy about the Milwaukee 8s turning that into a lower cooling system. And it may have also been a part of the twin cam era as well. But regardless, I'm super glad that that is now a storage area for people again. The new tank badging is great. I think it's a whole lot better than the ones that we were running on the Ultra Limiteds of the years past. This is a standout tank badging that makes you look at it and it actually draws your eye in. One big thing that I'm curious to see how people either like it or don't is there's no rear audio from the factory on this bike. I don't know if that was just they weren't sure if people were going to like it versus not, or what the case was for it, but there is no audio from the factory for the rear. You can get it installed into the saddlebag lids, but I'm just curious to see what people do with that long term. One big improvement on this is for the Ultra Limited, that is something that I'm going to have to break myself of. For the Street Glide Ultra, this is coming with the navigation already flashed to the bike from the factory. I know last year that was something that a lot of people weren't crazy about whenever it was first announced that the touring bikes were not going to be having the navigation standard from the factory. As we got into the year, I wasn't running into so many people really caring one way or another. But for the bike that's built to go cross country, this is the one where it makes the absolute most sense that you have that navigation, because these are the people that are going to be using it the most. So having the navigation from the factory onto it, really, really nice. This bike, we do have one of these in the showroom as I'm recording this. I haven't had the chance to take it out on the road, but haven't played around with it. The bones of this bike are the same as the Street Glides. This one's just coming with a tour pack that is mounted to the frame of the bike, the upgrade with the navigation already on there, and the seat is a different, more comfortable touring style seat. It's a bit stiffer. One of the big complaints that I heard from last year was that the seats, while very comfortable out of the box on the road and Street Glides, if you go on a longer ride with it, you would actually start to feel a little fatiguing in your hips just because of the softness of the seat. So this seat, it's got some cushion, but it's also got that firmness. I'm excited to get this one out there and ride on it. And now for the bike that surprised me the most, and whenever I first heard about it, I thought there's no way. The Pan America ST. So the reason that I would have thought no way on this bike is I don't have my finger on the pulse to a crazy amount with the enduro style off-roading dual sports segment. And for me, having played around with the Pan Americas here at the store, I love the Pan America as it comes from the factory. And it's already a very sporty bike. So I was like, why would there be a need for an ST specific? Motor Company, on the other hand, does have their finger on the pulse and does listen to the feedback on stuff. They saw where a lot of people were buying the Pan America, not so much for off-road use, but for that street riding. And so they made a bike specifically for that. A lot of it is they've just stripped out stuff across the bike, so they've taken off a lot of the guards that you would be using for if when the bike would go down, such as up in the front for it's not really an engine guard, but like the front radiator guard setup. They've taken off the hand guards, shorter windshield, it makes you more in the wind, as it were. Uh, the front end now has street tires across both sides, and the front end has been tweaked. I'd have to play with it to really feel what that difference is feeling like. They have said that this bike sits about an inch lower from the factory and will still come with that adaptive ride height. So that should help a lot of people that they don't need all that extra ground clearance. They just want something that goes fast. Um, they've also taken a different front fender onto it. Fits the bike style a little bit more. The simpler seat, that's the part like where it's kind of looks like it might be lower. It also just may have been sculpted a different way. So be sure to keep an eye out. Whenever this bike comes in, I'm going to be like going front to back across it. This bike is not going to be having the off-road modes because it's not a off-road bike, but there's going to be a lot of stuff of the Pan America parts and accessories catalog that will fit over to this bike, since the frame and the bolts of it are going to be pretty much the same. To me, this is a different trim level of the Pan America, but in this segment, since the Pan America is so utility-based, this utility is for the off-road riding. So I can't wait to get my hands on one, play around with it, and see what I think about it. Fun little fact about it, according to my GM, for the currently at this point, if you're watching in a few years, it's not going to be new, but the new Captain America movie that's coming out, or it's either Captain America or the Thunderbolts, Bucky is actually riding on a Pan America ST in that movie. If you look in the trailers, you can't really tell what it is because they're blacking it all out, putting it in the shadows, because one, it's not the focal point, but also at the release of the trailer, it was still like a month or two before Harley-Davidson announced stuff, so I'm sure there was some secret embargo, don't tell people what's going on thing. And that is the full, as of today, release of the 2025 model lineup. Again, this video is just an overview of all the different bikes that are out, my first impressions and thoughts. I'm super excited for this model year. Last year, I had a lot of fun with the street and road glides with their refresh. I've always been more of a soft-tail Dyna type person, so the cruiser segment is far more in my vein, so I'm excited to play around with all these bikes, see how they feel different. It should be a whole lot of fun. If you enjoyed this video, it would mean a lot to me if you would like it, subscribe. I'm going to be doing more stuff like this. I do behind the scenes of working at a Harley dealership and also reviews of bikes. I'm going to definitely be hitting the big changes across bikes throughout the year and riding on them and doing a review. If there's any bike specifically that you would like me to mess around with, please leave a comment below and I will gladly do a review. But more than anything, thanks for watching.